Hi, welcome. Before we get into the video, I just want to say a couple things first. First, my new mic is coming in by the end of the week. So next week, stay tuned because it's going to be new look, new setting. I won't have these anymore. So it's going to be fantastic and I'm really looking forward to it. I also have a guest on the video on the channel, my very first one next week. And we're going to talk about God and stuff, but just something really awesome. Secondly, we are doing a fundraiser for some t-shirts. I will have the link in the description. If you don't want to buy one, there is a donate on the option. So that would be phenomenal if y'all can help us donate. All right, let's talk. Hi. So one of my favorite books of the Bible to read and to study is Paul's letter to the Galatians. And the reason being is that he starts it off different than any of his other letters. With most of his letters, he starts out by saying, "Hey, I'm Paul. Grace and peace be to you. You're doing this very, very well. I'm proud of you for this. Here's how you can improve in your faith, or here's how you can stand fast. Don't forget about the true gospel." But in Galatians, he shakes it up. He goes from, "Hi, it's Paul," straight into, "I can't believe that you are acting in this manner." In fact, in verse 6 of 1. So in verse 3, he says, "Grace and peace to you from God our Father." But in verse 6, he says, "I am astonished you are so quickly deserting from the one who called you to live in the grace of Christ." He says, "I am astonished." He goes straight into, I don't even know what to say. So you have this church, like I said, where this false doctrine is seeping in to this church, and he's addressing that. He's addressing that to the fullest extent, saying there is no other God except the one who we presented to you. And part of this false doctrine was you have to do this to be saved. You have to do that to be saved. If you don't get anything else from this video, let me assure you of this. The only prerequisite to salvation is that you believe in your heart and that you confess with your mouth. That is the only place in the Bible where it says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It says nothing about if you get baptized, you will be saved. It says nothing about if you speak in tongues, you will be saved. It says nothing about if you go talk to this person, you will be saved. It says nothing. The only place in the Bible where it says you will be saved is by simply believing. It also says that you're saved by grace through faith, not of works, so that no man can boast, so that no man can say, "I do this," or I did that, or "I had this done." Nothing. Part of what was going on here, especially back then, was this topic of circumcision, where if you are underage, go talk to your parents about that. But with circumcision, the difference between the circumcised and the uncircumcised, because the Jews relied heavily on circumcision and the Gentiles did not. So you had these Jews who were trying to seep their doctrine into this church, into this faith, saying you have to be circumcised to be saved, right? So here Paul is in verse 5, and up to this point he refers to the law a whole bunch. I advise you to go read it and to go study it, but he relies heavily on the law is not what saves you, because that's why Jesus came. Jesus came to fulfill the law. so that we can have a personal relationship with the Father. And we didn't have to follow the law. We don't have to sit here and obey all 600 and some odd laws. We don't have to do that because Christ died on the cross to fulfill that, to make sure that we could have that personal relationship. In fact, when Christ died, the veil was torn from top to bottom. The veil in the temple was torn from top to bottom. God ripped the veil open so that you can have a personal relationship with him. That's how much he loves you. But he says here in verse 5, for it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. And then he goes on to in this topic of circumcision versus uncircumcision, saying in verse 6, the only thing that counts is faith, expressing itself through love. Verse 7, you were running a good race. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth? That kind of persuasion does not come from the one who calls you. A little yeast works through the whole batch. Here's what I want to say in the little time that I have left. Jesus loves you. Plain and simple. And he came, he lived, and he died for you. And there's nothing that you can do to separate his love. There's nothing that you can do to earn his love. There's nothing that you can do. If salvation was based on works, it would be impossible to achieve. Be impossible. Having a works-based salvation is... at that point, you're a slave to the law. You're a slave to that. He says, don't burden yourself with that. Don't burden yourself with this idea that you have to be perfect. Now, should you live out your faith? Yes, 100%. But Paul says, listen, family, what matters most, he says in chapter 6, he says, what matters most is a new creation, whether circumcised or uncircumcised. Jesus loves you. He came, he lived, and he died. Because he loves you. And there's nothing that you can do to separate that. And there's nothing that you can do to earn or to keep him from loving you. He loves you simply because he loves you. So I encourage you to run to him. For it is for freedom that Christ has set you free. He set you free. He died on a cross because of his love for you. And I know I've said that numerous times throughout this video, but I cannot emphasize it enough. So if you're watching this video today and you're struggling with something, or you're struggling in that moment, let's say you're in church and you just feel like you can't worship because you're not worthy of his love, or that you messed up, that you screwed up somehow, and that he's not going to love you anymore, ignore that voice, because that is the voice coming straight from the devil himself. He loves you. 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 And he set you free from that. So do not be burdened by that yoke of slavery anymore. Go in peace. Live in Christ. He loves you. And I do too. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my video. Please go and like it, as well as subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell for more videos every Wednesday. Love you all.